Here at Be Freaking Awesome, we believe that life is too short to be anything less than extraordinary. Join us as we explore what it means to live authentically, grow continuously, and have a blast while doing it. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Be Freaking Awesome. I'm one of your hosts, Sami here with Angela Belford, and today we are joined with a guest, Tara Clancy, and we are going to be talking about the importance of rest and sleep and your sleep performance, and particularly how all of these things can really help you with your goals and with what you're hoping to accomplish. So, Tara, before we get too far into the conversation, why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself, tell people who you are and what you do, and a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Sammy. And thanks, Angela. I'm glad to be here today with you. I am a sleep strategist, which is different than a sleep coach. And as we get into it today, you'll see, we'll get more into that. And basically, like somebody asked me the other day, like, how did you get so into this? What you do is so different. And I said, well, like most things, it was kind of not, on purpose. I realized, in 2014 that I was dealing with a sleep performance problem and that I had been for about 4 decades and had no idea
Mm.
because I was getting 8 hours of sleep a night. I woke up feeling like $1 million, slept through the night. So, how could I have a sleep problem? Well, that's where we get into the idea of sleep performance, which is what we'll talk more about as well. So,
Wow.
that's it in a nutshell.
That is amazing. I am really excited to jump into this. And I'm curious, what's the difference between a sleep coach and a sleep strategist? I know we were going to get into it later, but I got to know what
Yeah,
makes
well,
those
I mean,
different.
yeah, well, sleep coaches really can help you with the things, the sleep hygiene sort of things, and
Mm,
really help you nail down all those things that are critical to set you up for a good night of sleep. It's kind of like if you think of a bed, a sleep coach is kind of like they will be the box spring, the base, and then
mm,
on top of it, you put the mattress, and some sleep coaches can get into some things that are the mattress a little more than the foundation, than the foundation. But what you really want is the good mattress and one of those toppers as well, if you can. And that's
mm.
really, as a sleep strategist, what I do. And why? Because I've lived it. I had to figure out what to do to get to that point of actually being able to get benefit from the 8 hours I was spending sleeping every night. And when you do, it's a game changer. It's like a new lease on life. And so that's why I'm really so passionate about helping people, to look at sleep performance and then to improve theirs because it really, like I said, it's a game changer.
Absolutely. I have two young kiddos, and probably for me, I remember the biggest difference, quick postpartum period, when we got to go from 2 hour, 3 hour sleep stretches to 6 to 8 hour sleep stretches. I was like, holy cow, like what is I am a brand new person. And I just remember even that was such evidence for myself that in that
Mhm.
season of life where it's hard to not do 3 hour sleep stretches when you've got to wake up and feed the baby and do all the things,
Yep.
then going to like, he slept 6 hours last night. Oh my gosh, the sun is shining and the birds are chirping and everything is amazing just because I got 6 straight hours of sleep. And then somebody else being like, 6 hours would kill me. And I'm like, when you're in deprivation mode,
Absolutely. I
golly.
had a similar story on that. I remember I was doing, I had my son was coming up on 1, so I was still, still not getting a nice 8 hours reliably like I used to before, before having a baby. And I had this big talk that I was doing, that my first full day talk since I had had him, and I was working all day, and then you trying to got him to sleep, trying to get every last minute thing done.
Mhm.
And I had said to my husband, listen, just keep him with you tonight. I need to sleep because I'm on all day tomorrow. And by the time I was settling down, it was midnight. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm only going to get 6 hours of sleep. And I said, wait a minute, I am guaranteed 6 hours of sleep. Woohoo, And you're right. So, and it's a funny thing because I was, accepting how tired I was during the day. It was just a factor of the baby and that kind of thing.
Right.
And then I was excited at the idea of getting, this solid number of hours. But really, if I had known that I was also dealing with the sleep performance problem, I would have known that whole period was even worse than it had to be, because I was in chronic exhaustion before I even got to having the baby. So, but again,
Mm.
that's something else. But it's
Okay.
this idea of,
So
accepting things. Yeah, go ahead.
we love the concept of start with why. So let's start with why it's important to have good sleep performance. Because I got to be honest, when you say I was getting 8 hours of sleep, but I had sleep performance issues, I'm like, huh? Why? And we've been friends for months, right? So anyway, shout out to our NSA North Texas, that is National Speakers Association, the speakers, not the listeners. Anyway, that is how Tara and I became friends. But I want to know a little bit more. Why is sleep performance important, and really unpack what's different about just the number of hours you get versus performance.
Yeah. Well, it is this idea of, when a lot of times when people think I'm just not getting enough sleep,
Mm,
and if I could only, like a new mom, right? Or if I could only sleep through the night, or, many millennials, if I could shut my brain off at before 1 o'clock in the morning, I'd be fine to get up at 6, whatever. And so we think of sleep as a numbers game. Get the right amount, and then you have checked all the boxes. But there really is, you need to look beyond that. And really, what I talk about is looking at performance on a 24-hour cycle, right? And if there's anything that you're dealing with during the day, when you're awake, that is just, you're anxious, you're low energy, you're craving things all day, and you're having trouble managing your weight, a whole range of things that are not what we're supposed to experience. Then if whatever you're maybe looking at, the first thing you should do is look at what's going on at night. And if you're not meeting the numbers aspect, right, if you're not getting the right number of hours of sleep, start there. And then if you are getting the right number of hours of sleep, like I was, and you still are having some problems during the day, then look at the performance of your sleep, because that's going to be the differentiator. And so that's really like the difference of this idea of not just sleep, but sleep performance. I compare it to a cell phone. In my book here, I say, what do you do with your cell phone at night? You put it on the charger. And for what reason? So that you have a fully charged battery the next day, so that all the capacity that phone has, right? All that computing power, all those apps, everything is available to you. But what happens if you forget to put that phone on the charger? Before you know it, that phone is in low power mode. The capacity is still there, but you can't access it because you don't
mm,
have the power or the energy, right? We are the same way. So if we're not plugging in and fully recharging at night, we'll run for a bit during the day, and then we're in low power mode. And then those
mm,
apps are not available to us. So for some people, it'll be like the health apps, right? Either they're tired, or they're, like I said, hungry all the time, cravings, having weight problems, blood sugar problems, high blood pressure problems, whatever. For other people, it'll be more in the productivity apps, right? They can't focus, they can't get anything scheduled, they can't get anything crossed off the to-do list. Other people still will have it more in the social apps,
mm,
where they just can't have decent relationships with anybody. Everybody's annoying. I say,
mm,
if you find that everybody in the world is just annoying, it's time to look inward, right? Because not everybody. So basically, it's this idea, if we come to our days with a fully charged battery, we have the energy to address the multitude of things that are coming at us. And we know in this like post-pandemic world, those things just keep coming at us, right? So the outside world isn't going to get any easier for us. So it's even more important to make sure that we give ourselves the opportunity to get fully charged, to come to our days with a full battery, so that we have everything to bring to managing this, crazy life we have in this world now.
I love that because what I just heard you say is there are at least three different indicators. I have always thought of a sleep issue, my indicator light being I feel tired. And I love the additional indicator of socially, I'm like everybody is annoying me. And if you slow down, you can say, oh, well, maybe I'm tired. And I've often said to people, well, are you tired? Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Whatever, stressed out. But then the idea of thinking about performance, that makes sense to me too. The one that's curious to me is like what you're talking about it feeling over hungry, you feeling like blood sugar issues. I was literally, as you were listing those things, I was thinking, I've never thought of those things related to sleep, right?
Mhm.
I know for a fact that by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, if I've skipped several meals, I can be like totally lethargic. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, I need a nap. And I've found myself going, "No, you need food. Actually, you actually need some fuel." But then when I'm tired, it's also harder to make that good choice of the
Right.
right fuel to put
Right,
in,
right. Yeah.
right? But then to
Nobody's
look
reaching for a piece of iceberg lettuce at that point, right? It's the red velvet cake or something.
yeah, which is yeah, that's why I buy my self-control at the grocery store, right? If you don't have the red velvet cake, then you can't get there. But I
Right.
love the idea of thinking of these as like, oh, the underlying
That
problem.
that's
And
exactly it, Angela, because we in our society, especially in our Western medical model, the emphasis is treating the symptom, right?
Mhm.
So, if you have high blood pressure, well, then you need some medication to control that high blood pressure. But why do you have high blood pressure?
Right.
Get in
Let's
underneath, and if we look through sleep and we see when you go to sleep and you're supposed to cycle through all of the stages appropriately, so for what purpose? To allow your brain to repair and recharge,
mhm.
because when your brain can repair and recharge, it can do its job, right?
I
And
like
what is
that.
its job? It's the executive of everything in the body, right? The
Yeah,
physical stuff, the mental stuff, the emotional stuff, all of that. But
that's
what
beautiful.
happens if your brain hasn't repaired and recharged? Well, then you've got a crazy commander going on up there. It's not able, in the case of high blood pressure, it's not able to do everything, releasing all the hormones, chemicals, etc. And as a result, every system in the body is affected afterwards. And so, really, if you look at how many things are related to a sleep problem, like a sleep
Yeah,
performance problem in particular, it is astounding. But it makes perfect sense because,
it
just like you
does.
said, it's the underlying cause.
I had a coworker who I used to work with that her daughter was probably about 6 or 7, and they were looking at getting, potentially getting an ADHD diagnosis, and their doctor actually said, "Before we go through with the full diagnosis, can we do a sleep study?" And they ended up finding out that she was get really sleep deprived. She wasn't breathing well at night. She was mouth breathing through her mouth on her nose. She had a couple of different things going on that when they actually addressed the sleep issues, almost all of the ADHD like symptoms went away. And that was one that blew my mind thinking about the overlap of symptoms between ADHD and sleep deprivation, particularly I think in kids that
Yeah, but
you're
adults too.
right.
Adults too. Because think about it too. What is
Mm.
ADHD? Attention hyperactivity, uh,
Deficit.
attention, yeah,
Deficit.
yeah,
Attention
yeah.
deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Disorder, that's what I want. That's the word I was
Yeah.
looking for. Disorder. So
Mhm.
it's not telling you what the cause is. It's just, a naming of all the symptoms. So if we get
Mm.
in and we can help, and I'm so glad to hear that as a kid they did that, because now this
Mhm.
kid is saved from, all of the struggle from being unable to focus, and all of the struggle that happens when you give a kid medication that affects the brain. like the brain is still growing up into your, into your 20s. So what does it do to the brain,
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Absolutely.
adults too, I can't tell you how many
Yeah.
people say, oh, my ADHD, I just realized I have ADHD. And it's like, well, actually what you have is the accumulation of years and years of your brain not getting to repair and recharge. And it's funny, on my very early on my podcast, I interviewed a girl that I knew when I was like 20 years old. Like we were really tight, going to all concerts together and everything. And then both of us around the same time realized that we were dealing with this sleep performance problem separately. We weren't really in touch anymore. And in retrospect, both of us said, yeah, we'd always felt a little bit tired, but guess what? We just accepted that that's how we ran, and
Mhm.
never questioned it. Now there's so much more awareness and stuff, and then people are talking about it, and that's why I'm out here talking about it, especially, like I said, from the sleep performance, because this is how we make real change. And when you talked, Sam, about, the new year and people making goals, resolutions, what happens so often? You're like, all right, I'm going to do it this year. I know I didn't do it last year, and the year before wasn't so good. And well, the one before that was the pandemic. So forget that. And then, well, when was the last time you had that really great year? And if it's been a while, or if you've never had it, then it's really time to look at your sleep performance, because there's another thing that happens. If year after year, or if just, attempt after attempt, you fail to meet what you are trying to meet, that that failure thing comes to be part of who you are. Then you come to say, this is just how I am. Either I'm lazy, or I'm mean spirited, or I just can't, I'm not smart enough. It becomes part of the story that you tell yourself. But what I want to make sure everybody realizes, it's really, like we said before, it's just a symptom. If you
Mm.
haven't been able, if you can think up these things and you have excitement over, and you're like, oh, I think I can do this, but something breaks down, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It means that there's something getting in the way. And so if you can figure out that underlying thing, and like we were saying, having a sleep performance problem is the biggest one. If you can address that, and all of a sudden those doors open up to you.
That's fantastic. So now we've decided that we know why this is important and we know how to look at our sleep performance. Can you give us some quick tips? We don't have, we have a limited time, but
Yeah.
what are some things that are really impactful ways that we can start to improve our sleep performance?
Yeah, well, hands down would be the number one thing to do, is to make sure that you are doing all of those basic sleep hygiene things that we've talked about, right? And so, like for years, those have been things that sleep coaches have been doing for years. Things like watching the caffeine you consume during the day, getting to the in the evening, watching, exposure to light from a screen, having a bedtime routine with a consistent time, all those things. Really make sure you're doing all of those things. And then if you are not feeling recharged and refreshed, and it's not, giving you the days that you want, then look at sleep performance. Then that would be, the time to do that. I say, use what the XYZ formula. If during the day you have problem X, whatever it may be, ask why. Don't just accept it, and make your primary suspect your Z's, your sleep, right? So you
Mm.
address it from a sleep hygiene standpoint, all the stuff that we've known about, the foundation of the bed that we talked about, maybe getting into the mattress. And if it's still not working for you, then look at your sleep performance. We can schedule a sleep reading. It will give you exactly what you need, to tell you really what to do, for the particular challenges that you have.
So I'm just going to ask the question again because those all seemed like sleep hygiene things. Are there
Mm-hmm.
th how do you so is the only way to find out if I have a sleep performance thing to get, like, a sleep study or, you said a sleep
No,
reading? Like
no, and
okay.
here's the thing too, I'm glad you asked that. So if you go in for a sleep study, there's a chance that you will get a false negative, that you will have a problem, go in for the study, and they'll say, no, no problem. That's what happened to me. And you walk out there and you're like, oh, that's not the problem, right? Why is that? Because they're looking at one parameter and they're looking at a certain level of it. And so
Mhm.
if you don't have your challenge with that parameter and at that level, they say, no, you don't have a problem. But what it really means is you don't have a problem that they have a solution for, right? Because the big solution is this CPAP machine, right?
Mhm.
Um, so if that's the case for you, if your doctor suggests it, do it. Absolutely. But if you do not feel great during the day, you're not, just how you want to be during the day, then say to yourself, well, maybe I have a sleep performance problem. It may not be at the clinical level that, they can detect it on their tests. But I talk about this thing called the sleep performance continuum, right? At one end is green, yellow, the other end is red. So green, healthy sleep, everything's happening. You are doing beautifully during the day, handling life's challenges, and everything's fine. You don't have anything to do. You're not even thinking about your sleep because there's no question. The other end, the red end, would be like clinical sleep apnea, where you're falling asleep when you're driving, you're biting people's heads off, you're ready to divorce, you can't deal with anything, can't focus. Definitely going and get that test done just to make sure that it isn't a clinical level. But what if you're in the middle and you're like we were saying before, just can't focus. You have the weight challenges. You're dealing with high blood pressure, maybe even type 2 diabetes. You're not as happy. You don't get as much joy from your relationships. You can't think of the last time you went out and did something that you love to do because you've just been too tired. If you're anywhere in there, make sure your sleep hygiene is secure. And if it isn't, then take a look at your sleep performance. Like I said, I do a sleep reading consultation. It'll walk through all things that you wouldn't think of, you wouldn't really connect the dots on otherwise. But that would definitely be warranted to do it at that point. I'll give you a quick example. So I had two clients, two guys. They were both waking up to go to the bathroom at night. Right. And one
Mhm.
of them was dealing with anxiety so bad, he was ready to go see a therapist to get a medication. And the other one just couldn't focus and actually, was worried if he was going to be able to, maintain his job. He had a leadership position. So it turned out the two of them had very different reasons for that. And they had very different thinking around it, about how big of a deal it was. I know we're short on time, but what we had to do was look in and see what was driving it. For one of them, it was a very simple solution. For the other one, they really needed more sophisticated strategies to help them, really more what I call sleep and innovations. So I can't really give you like here's what you should do, because it really depends on what the cause is. But the bottom line is, like I said, the biggest thing I can say is, as I said before, if you're not feeling like your days are running the way that you want them to run, then just don't accept that how it has to be.
That
Like
makes a lot of
another
sense.
example.
Oh,
So yeah, we were mentioning before about being a new mom, right? So I was a new mom. I was a new single mom. I mean, I was a
Mm.
mom. I was a new single mom, so I'd gone back to work full time.
Mm.
I had two very young kids, and guess what? I was exhausted.
mhm.
But what was the bigger problem? I accepted that being exhausted was just how it had to be, given all the stuff I had going on in my life. And it was after a couple of years that I happened to find out that I had this sleep performance problem. And then all of a sudden, it was like, whoa, I had been accepting that level of living, really. But really, what I should have been doing was expecting so much more, that there must be something going on because I should be able to get more joy out of every day than I was. So that's really, I think the big thing is people say, "Ugh, I've tried this. It's not going to work. It's just how it has to be." I would
Awesome.
say, don't just accept that, expect more. So take a look at your sleep performance and do if I invite you to do a sleep reading with me. In fact, I have a special offer for your listeners, and you
Mm.
can save 50% on a sleep reading. And really, it's a game changer.
I feel like in some of the examples you were talking about there, even, the person who was having a hard time focusing, having anxiety, it makes me think back to our episode we had on the different kinds of rest. And I wonder how much, if you just get in only in the sleep part of rest and you think about just that, you can end up in that spot where you check all the boxes and yet you still don't feel rested. Do
Mhm.
you see when people think about rest more holistically, does that help make a difference in their performance? Whether they're thinking about creative rest or social rest or those different kinds of things, does that help people's performance?
Oh, absolutely, it does. I talk about this idea of this day brain, night brain, right? Your day brain has very clear responsibilities and activities that it does. So does your night brain. And guess what? When your night brain doesn't get to do what it needs to, because, say, your day brain won't end the shift. Think about people who have trouble falling asleep at night, right? They're racing mind. Like, hey, day brain, cut it off. Stop. The night brain has to take over right now. But if that
Mm.
doesn't happen, the night brain doesn't get the time that it needs to do its work. And what happens during the day? Well, the night brain comes in,
Mm,
right?
Mm.
You either need a nap, right? You literally take a
Right.
nap, or you just feel so,
mm,
foggy headed and you're reaching for a cup of coffee. First thing is make sure that you are indeed, recharged and repaired, from a brain perspective, so you can access all those different types of rest because they are critical, right? You need
yeah.
all those kinds of things. But if you just don't have the energy to even seek them out, then they're not options for you,
What's interesting when you're talking about the day brain versus the night brain, I know particularly when I used to be corporate and I've got a lot of friends now, one of the struggles that they talk about with that is a phrase that the internet has taught me is called time rebellion, where when the day is not your own and you don't get to decide what you're doing during the day, and
Mm.
then in the evening, you know that you should go to sleep. You know that you need that 8 hours. You know that you need to do that, but suddenly, this is the only time that's mine, and I'm gonna do what I wanna do, and I'm gonna feed the little gremlin after midnight and go crazy and do whatever it is, and so they end up scrolling on their phone all hours. They play video games too late, and then the next day, they're like, "Oh, that was such a dumb decision of past me," and yet they get stuck in this loop of time rebellion because it it's so hard to jump out of it, but I feel like there's that work satisfaction piece of it, there's control, there's all of these elements that then you're not even making the conscious decision for your sleep hygiene because of these social elements, which I feel like it's just one of those things that's gonna compound, and like you were saying, year after year, you're gonna get more into a deficit and be gone farther and farther, feels like you're having to dig
Yeah,
yourself out of a hole.
I
So
love
hard.
absolutely.
that.
I mean, there was the Blue Cross Blue Shield study. The last one that I saw was in 2019, and they said millennials were sicker at that age at that point than Gen Zers had been at that age at that point because of
Gen
all the things
X.
you're mentioning. And
Wow.
really, what we have is a cultural problem that if our days are tied that much to work and not being able to do what we really want to do, the variety of things,
Right.
then that's a thing that we need to address. In fact, I have a workplace assessment that I do that allows the CEO to see where everybody is performing, because if they see that, oh my gosh, everybody's in this lower quadrant, not in this upper one, then all of a sudden they say that's really impacting how we do here, and then they're willing to take action to develop a culture of actually getting the sleep, taking care of ourselves. And when we do that, that's when we start to see real change. Because you can
Mhm.
even see, we do with our high schoolers, even having them get at the bus by 6 a.m. in the morning. You know what? We're setting them up for that crazy corporate, like sleep later, sleep. So yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
No, no, but it makes sense, I think, to think about just how interconnected that, yes, like your sleep and your sleep performance matters a lot. And we are whole human beings. And I think that, here on the Be Freaking Awesome podcast, we try to highlight what's this area, what's that area. And so I hope that people can hear this to see we're really trying to bring a spotlight for a moment on
Yeah.
thinking about your sleep a little bit more intentionally.
Yeah,
Tara,
that's
it's,
what I said to sorry, just want to say one thing.
yeah.
I said to Angela before, I said, yeah, if you really want to be freaking awesome, show up to life at 100% of yourself, right? Bring 100% of yourself to life. And how do you do that? You allow your brain to repair and recharge at night. And
Mm,
that is what happens to happen during the thing that we call sleep. So think about it as repairing and recharging rather than that just this old concept of sleep. And when you think of it that way, you're like, yeah, this is worth my time. This is something I should invest in.
yeah, I think that's so good. Tara, if people want to find you, connect with you, where can they do that?
Yeah, well, the best place is on my website. That's taraclancy24.com. And if anybody is interested in the sleep reading,
Mhm.
you'll see it right on the menu there. They can click sleep reading. And as I said, I have a special now for your listeners where you can save 50%. So you can just get the
Mm.
code half off there. You'll see it on
Oh,
the website.
beautiful.
Wonderful.
Beautiful. We'll put that in the show notes so that when you guys are listening, you guys can get to that website and get that
Awesome.
discount. But thank you so much for joining us today, Tara. And we hope you guys are able to use this to help set your foundation for your 2025 as you're looking forward. Don't just think about all of the big high in the sky things, but also think about what are the foundations and that
Mhm.
you're adding in so that you can go be freaking awesome every day in your life and with all of your goals. Thank you guys so much. And until next time, we hope you guys go be freaking awesome.